Hey everybody, this is Connor here, BoatsDon'tSink. Today I am here with a recap or metagame overview of the fall season, BCS 2019. We're talking about the regional season and the World Finals. Bushiroad actually gave us a lot more info than they have in the past for this season. During Worlds, they had sort of a slideshow with a bunch of charts. Unfortunately, there has been some info we've seen on those charts that, based on what we had from like first-hand accounts of players, is a little off. But I've tried to account for that as much as possible to give you guys a good, accurate breakdown of the season. So without further ado, we have this chart here. I have remade these charts to be in a little bit more of a what I consider palatable out outline over words hard design, right? The charts that Bushiroad gave had the numbers in a way that aren't what people are going to be used to, especially from the Japanese side, where this chart that I've got here is more similar to what people from there have been seeing. So what we have here is the blue bars are going to be total representation of a series in all the regionals combined, which is 1,503 players, is what Bushiroad had as the total attendance of all the regionals. And the red bars are going to be the percentage of top 8 that you make up, right? So, 1,500 people. Say a series had 150 players, right? That's 10%. So the blue bar is going to be at 10% if that's the case. So you can see Konosuba is just below 150, Sword Art's a little above. The red bars are out of 144 top 8 slots. So 144, 10% is going to be about 14 players, 14 and a half. So you can see Attack on Titan is just above 10% there. And so what this really tells us is, A, it shows us, what decks people were playing the most. Bang Dream had the most representation, followed by Sword Art, Konosuba, Attack on Titan, Love Live Sunshine, and ReZero. And then it kind of drops off after that. Those are sort of the big 5 in terms of both representation and top cuts. Just in a different order for topping, right? We had Sword Art actually had the most tops, followed by ReZero, and then Sunshine. And then Bang Dream, sorry. And then Sunshine following that. The other thing you can really get from this is the size difference between the blue and red bars. So for a set to be what I would say is like performing appropriately, where the ratio of people that are playing it to the people that are topping with it is as close to 1 as possible, is going to be bars that are about the same size. So a good example of this here is going to be, honestly, like Bang Dream, or Gurren Lagann, or Fate Apocrypha, or Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai near the end there. Those bars are very close in size. So that means that, if 25% of the room is playing the deck, then 25% of the top 8 is probably also going to be the deck. It's a very even ratio. So those are decks that I would say are the most sort of like appropriately power leveled, right? Whereas a deck where the red bar is higher, more people are, not more people, but a higher percentage of people are topping with it than playing with it. Which means that the deck has a very positive sort of, not win rate, but right, like the success rate. It's a deck that has high conversion from Swiss to top cut. Whereas a deck where the red bar is lower is not performing as well. So overperforming and underperforming is what we're looking at here. You can see ReZero notably has a huge difference with the top 8 percentage being a lot higher. So ReZero overperformed the most. So before we move on to this next slide, a couple things I do want to point out at this chart, right? Some of these sets got like support or came out in the middle of the season. Notably, Bang Dream got a set in the middle of the season, and Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai came out near the end of the season, which is why its total representation is so low, because its representation is only from like 4 or 5 regionals. But so we can look at it and say, oh, not many people played it, but about as the same percentage tops with it as played it. So it's if it had more representation, it would be, or it had been around the entire season, it might be more in line with some of the higher up decks. We just don't know, right? But it still had that close to 1.0 conversion rate, which is, that's where a deck wants to be. Obviously, it wants to be a lot higher, but a deck is doing fine when it has that close to 1.0. And then stuff like Tolover and Project Diva, they look really strong. Like Project Diva has over a 2.0 conversion here, but that's not really saying a whole lot when only 10 people played the deck. So, small sample size, a lot of variance there. The big ones to be looking at here are these four, and then obviously Bang Dream with its just high representation. But ReZero, Love Life Sunshine, Sword Art Online, and Attack on Titan, in that order, had the highest conversion rates of highly represented decks, all of which made up over 10% of the top 8 field, and close to 8 to 10% of the Swiss field. So they're the ones that you're going to be seeing a good bit of, and they're going to be topping even more than you're seeing them. So these are the ones that are going to be the most powerful, right? And especially seem the most powerful when you're playing against them. They, or at least when you're looking at like tournament results and stuff. This kind of data is what Bushiroad Japan tends to use in their like restriction lists. Looking at, the set's seeing a lot of play, but it's not really converting well, so we're not going to restrict it. Or the set's seeing a good bit of play, and it's converting incredibly well, so we should probably restrict this to, just hold it back a little bit. From the most recent restriction list, Fate and Kimono Friends were the notable two that got hit. Fate had a lot of representation and close to a 2.0 ratio on the conversion. Kimono Friends had a lot less representation, as low as like 2% Swiss, but it was putting up like 3.0 to 4.0 like conversion ratios that are just insane. So like if 2% of people are playing it in the tournament, almost 8% are topping with it, or like almost 8% of the topping field is Kimono. So that's the kind of thing they look for. None of these are really outlandish numbers. ReZero is sort of like the craziest with, only 7% of Swiss, but 15% of top 8 is pretty wild. That's a very good spot for that deck to be. So, if something's going to get hit, it's probably like ReZero or maybe Love Life Sunshine. I know a lot of people want Attack on Titan hit. The only justification I could really see there is how many first places it took, which I didn't have marked on the chart, but Attack on Titan was a pretty reasonable portion of the first places, especially earlier on in the season. Getting as high at one point in the season as like 60% of the first places. Dropped back down near the end. But yeah, so these are the big decks to be looking at right now. The very top tier ones, you could say. Here we have the World Championship data. Same chart in terms of like what everything is. The new bars you'll see here are the green ones. The green ones represent the players that were they missed top 8 on tiebreakers. So in some timeline where people got paired up differently just through whatever random system, they could have potentially had good enough tiebreakers to make it into top 8 with the same record. So I think it's, in a tournament as small as this one, with only 36 people, I think it's important to note which decks, they didn't miss because they had bad records, right? They missed because they played just as well as some of the other decks and just had worse tiebreakers. So that's going to be the additional Attack on Titan, the additional ReZero, the additional Sword Art, and the additional Fate, making up 9th through 12th place. Differences between regionals and worlds. Attack on Titan's representation jumped a bit. And I think a lot of that is due to the players at Worlds. They're the more of the experienced players, the higher caliber players. They're the ones that have been playing through the whole reign of Attack on Titan and know its strength and all. So the representation here is closer to the topping field percentage from the Swiss. Love Live Sunshine has fallen off a lot. Don't particularly know why, but I think maybe a lot of them jumped onto Fate. That's one possibility. Um, Obviously did not convert very well. Nobody on Sunshine made top 8. Fate makes its first appearances at Worlds. Its release day was the same morning as like the last regional of the season, so I think only one person got to play it there. So it did not really have good representation in regionals, but it made some appearances here and had almost one player make it in the top cut. A lot of people, I'm surprised, were not scared off of Attack on Titan due to the perceived bad matchup it has against Fate, but here we are nonetheless. ReZero, Konosuba, and Bang Dream were sort of expected. Sword Art's pretty expected. I think the only other thing that really shocked people here was Konosuba's very high conversion rate. However, two of them were like 7th seed and 8th seed, I think. Or, no, not 7th. 7th was ReZero. 6th seed and 8th seed maybe, so they were near the bottom and could have very well been any of these other 4 players that didn't make it, so it is what it is. There's some iffiness there, right? They were the ones that made it in though, so Konosuba looks really strong from this chart. Here we have the actual top 8, so you can see, or I'm sorry, no, the Konosubas were, Ryan was higher up. Lamb was the undefeated after Swiss. Cohen was 8th, I believe. And then Christian and Ryan were 3rd and... No, they were 3rd and 6th. So yeah, 8th and 6th, I want to say, were the Konosubas. Regardless, we have Attack on Titan here in first place. For the 3rd time now. The 2nd time since it got Volume 2. Under the same player, even. So, typical yellow-red build, Eren into Mikasa. Not a whole lot to talk about other than the Sasha level 3, which I'll get to in a minute. The 3 Konosuba builds, 2nd place, 3rd place, and top 8, all very similar. Bunny Yun into the Clock Kick Megumin combo. Only big difference is 2nd place is running the Megumin early play. 3rd and top 8 are not. They are only playing copies of the Aqua early play. Which is something I don't think we've seen a whole lot of up until now, but they decided to go for this tournament. Presumably to just, save stock and focus more on the top end. 4th place, we have Cardcaptor Sakura, which is something I don't think people expected to do very well at all. But I've got a couple reasons why it was a decent meta pick here that I'll talk about. He's playing the Trial Deck combo on Reverse Salvage into Reflect. 2 of the other top 8 slots were ReZero, playing the Emilia level 1 combo into the Felt level 2 free refresh combo, just with the typical early play packages. Not a whole lot special there. As far as I'm aware, they didn't really have any cool anti-meta techs for us. And the top 8 Bang Dream is playing the new Fever Kasumi into Mocha level 3 combo, just alongside like Stock Swap and the Himari Anti-Change Bomb, which is pretty typical stuff that we see in the red-green Bang Dreams. So big things about this top 8, right? Riaz's Attack on Titan playing the To Seize Freedom Sasha early play. It's something that we have not seen thus far, really, but had a very impactful effect on this tournament, or at least on his placement. It has the same early play condition as the Eren early play from set 1, where your opponent has to have a level 3 on board. And it gains a soul when it attacks if you have 2 or more other core, which is going to be hopefully always. And then it has its big effect is that it, on play, you put the top card of your deck into your waiting room, and then you get to choose one of your opponent's level X or lower characters and send it to the waiting room, where X is the level of the card that you put from your deck. So, you're like, cool, if you mill level 3 or whatever, you get to, blow up your opponent's early play. That's pretty sweet. But really, when you think about it, if you hit even a Climax or a 0, you get to blow up a lot of cool utility cards. So that's going to be, especially these 4, alongside others, of course, but Shiro from Fate, new big dog in town, got hit super hard on the Japanese restriction list, just because it's been doing really well in Japan. And people were pretty worried that it was going to do the same in English, take over the format. Hasn't gotten there yet, but this card gets rid of Shiro pretty handily, which Shiro gives all their characters Clock on Core, which gives them a lot of staying power that they wouldn't otherwise have for card advantage. It gets rid of Konosuba's Ambush Union, which is their main advantage engine. It can get rid of Capture Stance Kanon against Love Live Sunshine, which means that they can't keep their early plays around as easily. You get to just pop it during main phase and then run over their Yo with all of your extra, power pumps on your own turn. Maybe play a Climax. They lose their Yo and can't save it. And if you play 2 Sashas or whatever, maybe you mill a 2 or higher and get to hit the Rico even, in addition. And then we have the sister font of her brother Lifa from Sword Art Online. It's just a very powerful utility card in the deck that typically sits in their back row. And hitting it can, get you some good offensive power since you're not having to deal with the act boost. And you hurt some of their toolboxing utility, right? Moving into the card captor deck, which is the other big one that I want to talk about, some of their choices. We have the card captor Sakura Reflect. Was the main level 3 combo that he chose to play. Becomes 11k if your whole board's Tomoeda or Magic, and the character facing it gets -1 soul. You can change into this at level 2, which means against a lot of decks, you're like Bang Dream especially, Attack on Titan, though Attack on Titan has some early plays of its own, but not everyone's been playing them. Against a lot of these decks, you might just be sitting there and walling out their 1 soul guys, right? Where you're putting them at 0, because they're just playing 1/0s, 0/0s as utility to try to hold over between levels 1 and 3. A lot of the more sort of traditional advantage-based decks are actually like sort of card advantage, high turnover decks are going to be playing like this, and you get to wall them out. And it has a Climax combo where you get to deal, or you gain 1,000 power and you gain 2 abilities when you attack. First one is that you cannot receive damage by auto effects of your opponent's characters during this card's battle. And the other one is that when the character facing it attacks, you deal 1 damage to your opponent, regardless of whether they front or side. So the big things this hits are going to be these 4. Mikasa can't deal either of her instances of damage. Yukina can't deal damage if she reverses you. Yo can't deal damage on attack. Xenon can't deal damage on attack. So you're shutting all of these off in terms of their burn effects and turning them into effectively vanilla, either healers or just vanilla attackers. And you're even draining a soul from them, which means that a lot of the time their damage output's not going to be super impressive. It gives you a pretty good chance to get them back between your own attacks and the 1 damage that they take upon attacking you. So a pretty good card against a lot of the top ends that one might expect to see at Worlds. The other card that he played in the same deck is the Mini Sakura Pink Dress. So this is a card that's not exclusive to Card Captor, which is why I really want to talk about it, right? It's in a lot of sets right now. Bang Dream got it. Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai got it. Even Fate got it on a Berserker. So a lot of sets have this profile right now. Sunshine. I don't know about Sword Art for sure. I know they have one coming in the future, but I don't know if we have it yet. Like Sword Art has it, or not Sword Art, sorry, I apologize. The one that I said before, Sunshine's, Love Live Sunshine. A lot of good sets have access to this effect, and it's one that's not seeing a whole lot of play. I know there was a lot of hype around it when Gurren Lagann came out and it was a box topper promo, but we haven't seen it actually do much. And I don't know why, particularly, but right now it's in a pretty good spot in the meta. Can't be reversed by cost 0 or lower, means that Bunny Union can't reverse you, Eren can't reverse you, Sakura can't reverse you. Even decks that don't have reverse combos, their Emilia that hits 7,000 power can't reverse you. It completely shuts off Fever Kasumi, because even their level 1 bomb can't reverse you. Chica can't reverse you as a level 1 bomb. So you get a lot of very good value out of this card. It's only 55, but you play it and it sticks around. Meaning you're not having to play more cards from your hand in order to replace it. And your opponent's likely not getting a lot of their reverse effects. It gets worse as we see more standby decks come around, because those decks are often playing 1/1s that can reverse this. But until then, this is a pretty solid profile that just gives you card advantage and effect denial for very low actual cost. Um, so I'm a big fan of this, and I think it probably proved pretty useful during his run in this tournament based on what we know the field to be. And here you can see some of the things I was talking about: the Eren, Yunyun, Sakura, Chika. You get to beat a lot of these out. So here's where I've got my tier list after this season, based on both, my opinion of the decks. Obviously, this isn't set in stone what the tier list is. Different people have different opinions. This is what I see it as right now, especially given some of the results we got from the fall season. Biggest changes are Konosuba down to A tier, and I think that's just because the deck it kind of struggles if you don't get a lot of your effects going on early. If you don't get your Resonate ready to go and have enough resources for it, if you're not getting your advantage combo at level 1 or like Snot Aquas, you're probably going to be struggling on stock because of all the Resonates you're using. And you need all those resources to set up for your actual very powerful endgame. And if you don't, sometimes it's just not enough, and you don't really have the just the oomph to still win the game through it. So I've knocked it down just a little bit. Do some what I think are some inconsistencies there, but still a very powerful deck. Obviously, anything A tier or higher, I think, is very plenty fine to win a tournament with. Then even B tier, you can expect to see a good bit of tops, right? ReZero and Sword Art up to A plus. They performed a lot better than I expected them to, and I think they're still very good in the field. A lot of Sword Art and ReZero's effects don't really need to interact with the opponent, so they're just sort of in a vacuum, very good stuff decks that have powerful effects printed on their cards. So they're up there for sure. They both also have good like defensive options and offensive options. More so offensive in Sword Art's case, more so defensive in ReZero's, where you have lots of compression. You have anti-damage counter in Sword Art. You have the rest counter in ReZero. You have minus soul in ReZero, etc. So you can set up just some really good board states and all. Sunshine, Bang Dream, AOT, still A+, still very powerful decks. Fate in A is probably lower than a lot of people have it. I know a lot of people probably have that at A+ right now. I think 8 Treasure gives you a lot of moving parts that can go wrong a little more often than you'd like. And I also think that Ryder is just not quite as impactful as she needs to be in an English meta. A lot of decks have ways to, even if not fully deal with her, at least mitigate her effect on the game. And Ryder is something that really wants to be getting as much use out of its effect as possible. When your opponent's able to mitigate that even a little bit, it can put you far enough behind with how much you have to like clock yourself for card advantage, and how small a lot of your characters are a lot of the time. Bunny Girl and Fate are the two that we haven't really seen enough of to know for sure, but this is where I've got them moving into the spring season. B tier is pretty much the same. Notable changes that Kontai is down from A into B. It's still strong, still efficient, still unique in that it has anti-heal and anti-salvage, but a lot of other decks can do very similar things to it, and most of them do it better or with better shells surrounding them. So I do have Kontai down in B now. And C tier is just sort of all the decks that kind of exist and are they have modern tools so you can play them and not feel terrible. They're just not as good. They're not as efficient or not as powerful as the decks above them. So from these decks, you can see there's still two sort of main strategies that most decks are playing. Either A, they're playing a powerful early play or wall game, where they're trying to be defensive, win board, and push through soul damage that way. The 4 decks you see here, Love Life Sunshine, ReZero, Gun Gale, and Bunny Girl Senpai, are all very good at doing that. The first 3 have early plays that summon more early plays, or early plays that refresh you and heal a lot. Bunny Girl Senpai has Standby, which it can use in conjunction with early plays that are refund stock and have very cheap conditions or very easy to fulfill conditions. Alongside Standby lets you set up powerful board states, even at level like 1 with the 2/2 Kogas. that I don't have pictured here. And then moving into level 2 with the Koga assist and the Kaede early plays and stuff. So these are more defensive decks. And the ones on the bottom are going to be your more offensive decks. And decks aren't like exclusive to each other, right? You can be a little bit of both. You can have, your Sword Art deck where it has some early plays and defensive tools in addition to the advantage and top end, right? But these bottom decks are going to be focused more on just very, low cost, building a lot of card advantage, and using those resources to turn into an explosive top end that sort of ends the game. These decks aren't really wanting to be grindy. They just want to kill their opponent often. So you can see AOT, Bang Dream, especially with the Yukina top end. A little Mocha's one of those more in between, right, where it's a little bit of defense, a little bit of offense. But Yukina especially a lot of offense. Aaron's a +2 in card advantage just for a reverse with no cost. Fever Kasumi can be a +2 with no cost. Yuki is a double hand fix that thins your deck a lot, right? And Union is just a free, check top 4, add 1, get a card. It's card advantage for 1 stock, playing a lot of stock generating stuff, and your finisher is probably the most explosive in the game even. So these decks are sort of the 2 main strategies you're going to see. And some examples you might see of like ones that are in between, right? You've got like Persona. Persona wants to be a more wall-based deck early game, where you have the 7k changers and your 2-1 that early plays down. So you've got some good counters up to like 10k. But then your top end is still very explosive with the Ryuji's giving shot effect and bouncing your opponent's characters, and Joker's just dealing a ton of damage. So that's one where you might see like a little bit of a mix, right? And even Amelia in the ReZero decks sort of leans in that direction. But yeah, so these are the 2 strategies that are still going to be very powerful. And the decks that are good at doing them or good at stopping them are going to end up being the best decks in the game for probably a while, at least through the next season. Here we have some of the upcoming titles that we'll see for the next season that you can expect to have an impact on the meta. Goblin Slayer in January and Sword Art Online Alicization in February will both be out before any of the regionals start for spring. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure comes out in March. It'll be right after the first regional. Then we have Fujimi Fantasia Bunko in the middle of the season. And Bang Dream and Adventure Time with no confirmed release dates thus far, but probably near the end of the season. These will either be like our May and June sets, or maybe we take May off and get one in June, one in July after the season ends. But these are the ones that we can expect to see have some impact, especially these first 4. And both of the other 2, Bang Dream Volume 2 will for sure be a strong set if we get it before the end of the season. Adventure Time, we still don't know any cards, so it's hard to say on that one. Yep, thank you guys for watching. Check me out, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, the Discord channels, and my store will soon be moving onto doing more Weiss on TCG Player. I will have these links in the description so you can check them out. We don't have a whole lot up on TCG Player yet, but we will be getting there with Goblin Slayer releasing next week. So again, thank everyone for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Give me your feedback on how the season went, what decks you think maybe should have done better, or that you expect to see doing really well next season. And see you guys next time.